confusing because the big bad orange person is out of office. Still has influence, still helping promote people within the Republican Party, helping shape Republican primaries, seemingly for a cost, because Sarah Huckabee Sanders won Trump's endorsement recently as a candidate for governor of Arkansas, and she spent a bunch of money at Trump properties. So, like all things related to Trump, it's likely to have some kind of transaction, and that transaction is likely to be counter to the interests of the American public. Feminists are sometimes accused of denying the inherent transactional nature of gender division at a cultural level, that men earned the bacon and brought the bacon home, and women dedicated themselves to household chores, and that was the bargain, and women have messed up that bargain. And women say, hey, we've joined you, we're helping earn the bacon thing, and maybe it's going to be earning some chickpeas going forwards, because it turns out the bacon contributes to methane and widespread use of land, intensive land usage in a way that contributes to carbon emissions that are jeopardizing our existence. And we seem to be locked into a pattern of increasingly frequent and severe unnatural weather events that are resulting from human-made climate factors. Human-made. I'm not just saying man-made, because part of the deal of joining men in the workforce is accepting responsibility as adults for what industrialized society is doing to nature, which we are part of. Greta Thunberg's had a video recently which employed the phrase, we are nature. So to me, that was great and went a long way to dispelling that false dichotomy that's been established for so long. Here's nature, admire it, protect it, bring up your children to want to protect nature. And of course, that just contributed to a lot of children feeling very sad when they began to realize what a terrible job humans are doing to protect nature. And they begin to feel as if how selfish and immoral are humans. And that's true, but it's also a function of how short-sighted humans are, because we are nature and we're collectively, particularly in the industrialized world, jeopardizing our collective existence through inability to recognize the obstacles that lie in the way of us solving our self-created problems, i.e. petrochemical wealthy influence over our political systems that's obstructing a path out of this self-created mess. Knowledge says all of his kids are unborn. Haha, yes. Mark is asking if the Clinton family has weight in politics. They do have a prominent voice. They're not part of the petrochemical wealthy elite codependent coalition of convenience that is sabotaging climate action. Hillary Clinton was very much in favor of climate action. And if she had not been robbed of her election victory in 2016 by the illegal activities of the colluding Trump campaign that colluded with an adversarial foreign nation whose economy is heavily petrochemical dependent, i.e. Russia, to gain an illegal advantage over Hillary Clinton and manipulate the electoral college system, not just in a electoral strategy kind of way, but a parallel secret secondary campaign run on Trump's behalf with Trump's knowledge, then there would have been someone in office for the last 4 critical years. Critical because the timeline we're in, every single year determines exactly the level of floods and disasters we're going to have in the future. Disasters is a good word. Global overheating related disasters disasters, because they're happening now. You can see them in the news. The phrase climate change or global overheating isn't typically attached to them, but if you know, you know. And that's polarizing people between people who are aware of the problem and people who choose to remain blithely ignorant of the problem, and as such cannot contribute to solving the problem. The problem doesn't have consequences that are meted out evenly. And we saw that with a pandemic disaster called COVID, which you might be familiar with, whereby essential workers were disproportionately hurt by the pandemic spread. People working in essential professions were more likely to contract COVID and more likely to die, and more likely to lack access to adequate levels of healthcare, meaning that even as the former Republican president, grossly neglected America and grossly neglected America's collective public health status, and therefore also caused an unnecessarily calamitous economic collapse. That they did so knowing that the harm was being disproportionately caused to people of color in the United States: Black Americans, American Indian, Native Americans, Hispanic Americans, all manner of Americans with non-white skin color who take jobs that are less desirable, in large part because of the gatekeeping skills of white people who have perpetuated white favoritism and reserved the best stay-home flexible jobs, pandemic-proof existences for white people. Whether there's an element of consciousness, an element of unconsciousness, it's all perpetuating a system of advantaging white people and keeping them safer. So they were safer during the pandemic. Out of every 1,000 deaths that occurred, say for 100,000 people in the United States, 1,000 COVID deaths occurred, 982 deaths to be very precise about the figures I'm referencing. 174 of that 1,000 dead were Black Americans. 124 of them were white Americans, which was 14% of the total, and 14% is not in any way commensurate with the proportion of white people that make up the American population. That's 60% of just white people, excluding Latino people of any background. So 60% white people in the composition of America, and 14% of the COVID dead. So what the white people had the white jobs, the white collar white jobs reserved for white people that enabled them to stay home and stay safe. And Republicans feed into that, those circumstances, the fact that white people might feel safe. They'll feel free to campaign, hey, I want shops to be open. I want Black essential workers and Latino essential workers to keep serving me, but I don't want to have to inconvenience myself. That's infringing on my white liberties. My white safety is not significantly impacted. I don't know that many other white people are dying. Do you know what? Black people know people who've suffered and died or become disabled as a consequence of COVID or long COVID. And that familiarity, that understanding that the pandemic is serious. A lot of white people on the Republican side still seem to be in denial. So white people are now separated into denialist white Republicans and people who are more likely to at least understand that the pandemic's serious, but they might overestimate their own risk and discount the fact that a lot of Black people are still being endangered by the actions of white and a small number of Black Republicans, because white Republicans and conservative media that support them and amplify their influence are still deceiving Americans and are still trying to strengthen and shore up Donald Trump's legacy, his legacy of deceit, his legacy of deadly deceit, of misleading the American public, those that listened to him, those that gave him and continued to give him any credence whatsoever as a truthful leader, to believe him that COVID wasn't serious, which is in line with his public remarks. Privately, he told Bob Woodward that the virus was airborne, that the virus could kill anybody. Told him that on February the 7th, 2020. Didn't tell American governors, didn't tell the governors of the states that were most hard hit by COVID, owing to their exposure through being desirable international tourist attractions cities and business hotspot activities. So New York that had that factor of massive amounts of international travel, creating its status as an initial hotspot of COVID transmission. So the deaths incurred by citizens in New York, Trump's responsible for those, even if people want to blame Andrew Cuomo for thinking that the virus could be contained and hospital beds could remain open for taking care of anybody who's sick by shunting off some of the older, sicker people to nursing homes. He didn't know it was airborne. Trump knew, and Trump didn't tell him. And Andrew Cuomo probably can't talk about that much publicly because it might appear from him to be shunting around blame, but I can talk about it, and I will continue to talk about Trump's pandemicidal approach to COVID, which was exploitative. He tried to use COVID to cover up a manufacturing recession of his own creation, which was a function of his tariff war, his misbegotten tariff war. Achoo! Am I going to sneeze? I won't stop talking about it. I'm fighting against the democratic tendency to be nice. I'm fighting against the tendency of liberal-minded people to say, oh, sure, civilized societies allow everybody to have their opinions. Democracies contain within them sometimes the seeds of their own destruction, because you can have a fascist leader elected. You can have a manipulative, deceitful fascist leader elected when your media fails to communicate and your concerned citizenry fail to read between the lines or to pick up the clues that one candidate is a liar. And lying upends the functionality of democracy. It upends the ability of democracy to protect itself from emotionally manipulative tyrants. Because an emotionally manipulative tyrant who is not adequately held to account through the media and through responsible citizens saying, oh, wait, lies is bad, lies loose in a democratic system allow for a manipulated problem to get worse, for there to be a contagious glee as a manipulative tyrant says, join with me and I offer you moral clarity of in-group, out-group animosity. I offer you the fun of hatred, because hatred can be fun. It's like getting involved in sports. I don't care about sports. I don't watch sports. But people who do, they fill the Twitter trend top 10 with their emotions. Helps you feel alive, caring about things. Tyrants help you care about things. They give you scapegoats to hate. They give you whole groups of people that you might not know personally, or even if you do know one Jewish person personally, you can just go, well, they're the exception. I've been given permission by a father figure, a stern, effective, magical father figure who promises me everything, who promises greatness for my country so I'm not selfish, who promises infrastructure to benefit everyone. He's so wise, and his promises are obviously grounded in fact. He wouldn't lie. Hate the Jews. It was fun. It was fun for people, and nobody talks about that. It's been fun for Trump supporters to hate liberals and to hate Democrats and to hate Mexicans. Fun. Morally clarifying, gives you a sense of purpose. It's energizing, it's invigorating. They've had a hell of a ride. And the cost of that fun was the humiliation of being associated with a man who incited an insurrection in order to keep hold of that corrupt power. He had manipulated himself into a position of holding on to for a while. And they won't cope with that humiliation. Like a child caught out in a bad action, they will continue their wrongdoing rather than admit fault, because it hurts. It hurts to be humiliated. So all of that glee had a cost. And they're like, no thanks. I'd rather stay addicted to this pattern of glee, to this pattern of moral clarity, belief in something bigger than myself, trust in a messianic type of protective, godlike figure who also is like Loki, or whose contrarian energy defies all of you. Defiance is fun too. All of Trump's followers have oppositional defiance disorder, if we want to pretend to be medical about it. Trump has been worse than Bush Jr. Yes. Well, if you're Iraqi, you might not say that, because perhaps 1 million people lost their lives as a consequence of Bush Jr.'s embrace of a path to emotionally validate American feelings through war, through unnecessary war. But yes. Knowledge says, how about that flood in Europe? Yes, a lot of destruction in Germany. The increased frequency and severity of weather events is something I've been talking about for a while. Obviously, a lot of people are talking about it for a while. Even if you feel hopeless as to what you can do in your own life to cut down on energy, to stop participating in a modern society where human inventiveness is celebrated through use of what's been invented. Cars have been invented, we use cars. Plastics have been invented, we use plastics. It is hard to mitigate against the forward thrust of that technology and that ingenuity, human ingenuity. But it has to be done. A way has to be found. And even if as individuals we don't always find a way forward, there are hipsters out there doing it, riding their bicycles, trying to cut down on energy usage. But sometimes those kind of efforts can feel futile when you can see the bigger inertia and the bigger thrust of activity. So we needed Trump out of office because we need people in power who take these problems seriously. Because what's happened in Germany will happen in our towns, in our cities. The temperature is increasing. Global overheating with overheating related disasters, unnatural disasters. Look like natural disasters, but it is unnatural how much they're increasing. We know from scientists that it's not just a function of, change, random change. It's a function of human activity. It's a function of wealthy societies and their industrialized activities that have brought lots of freedom and benefits and are also bringing along with them some attendant dangers that don't even just, like karma, endanger the people who've enjoyed the benefits of the technologies. They're endangering people all over the world. So let's have a look quickly. I think I'm going to go swimming with my family in a minute because I'm lucky. And as such, as a lucky, relatively non-impoverished person who has a chance to go swimming, let me point out that a lot of public pools in the United States were closed when desegregation was made law. So rather than cope with sharing the world, rather than cope with sharing swimming pools all over the United States, public pools, which offered bountiful benefits, they were shut down. And that habit of white people to cut off their nose to spite their face, it's a habit that needs to be looked at now, because the stubbornness, the emotional attachment to being right about and science being wrong. We're right about evolution, or we're right about gender relationships, or we're right about trans people should stick to their own lane. That stubborn attachment to outdated ideas. We're not going to admit anything's wrong with industrialized society. We're proud of Western civilization. You can't make us ashamed of your whiteness. We don't need anybody to be ashamed of their whiteness. We need people to be committed to the task of fighting the problems created by industrialized society, often by white people, but particularly by the white tendency to cut off noses to spite faces, to shut down public swimming pools in order to avoid being legally compelled to share a swimming pool with people of black skin, the people of black skin whose ancestors were forcibly compelled to come to America and suffer family separation, suffer indignity and humiliation, whilst generating enormous profits and consequently enormous geopolitical power for America as a whole and for the individuals specifically who owned slaves. This bitch is back. Hey, lady. The thing about the persistence of racism and the persistence of racist outcomes is that there are people now who don't have money because their family members were denied things that were given to white people. So there are people now whose grandfathers served in World War II who were denied the same benefits that were awarded to returning white service members. You're okay with that? You're okay with people having been able to benefit from the ability to buy houses and have their families benefit from the appreciation and value of property over time, whilst Black returning service members were unable to pass on that value and that growing wealth to their families? So no, there are people now who are still suffering. There are Black people now whose homes are valued, whose homes are significantly undervalued, hundreds of thousands of dollars potentially written off their homes because there are signs of Black habitation, of habitation by Black people. And the degree of residual prejudice is still impacting things. So yes, do you know what? Everybody's got their own journey. So I try not to call you a bitch to your face, but it's just very stubborn of you, lady, to not want to admit that there is ongoing patterns of persecution. There is ongoing injustice. And that injustice doesn't just fade away because it's in the past. Injustice that is not redressed can grow, can compound, can amplify, can, like a snowball, get bigger and bigger and more of a problem. Oh, I have so much content, lady. So let's look at some content right now because that's fair. Let's listen to one lady who visits the doctor to deal. Oh, first of all, in Iran, people are thirsty and chanting and protesting. I'm just drawing that back to the problem of climate change that white politicians like Mitch McConnell and Senator Joe Manchin, who's a Democrat, but who's helping give Republicans veto power over the democratic agenda of saving human lives from drought and thirst and harm and hardship, jeopardizing human society because of the stubbornness of paid for corrupted politicians like Mitch McConnell and to a degree Senator Joe Manchin and Democratic Senator Kristen Sinema as well. Now this is America in a single image. This is every US county, vaccination levels by adult. As you can see, the blue counties have higher rates of vaccinations and are closer to being safe. People who live in red counties like Holistic Deb, she might be a red dot in a blue county, in which case she's benefiting off the responsible behavior of blue politicians and blue voters who are more likely to get vaccinated than Republican voters who are more likely to watch Fox, listen to Trump, believe in Trump, and behave in a reckless, irresponsible, deadly way that harms children, exposes unvaccinated children to danger, exposes children to the danger of losing their parents and having to suffer through the financial and emotional deprivation that's attendant to that. So that's some content for you, darling. That's some facts. It's really important. This is another fact of what happens now in America now. That is an elected Congress member being handcuffed her hands are getting zip tied behind her back. She is singing in protest of voting rights, which are being endangered all over the United States in 26 different Republican state legislature controlled states. She's being arrested, and the white people who were indulged by being able to sack the Capitol and weren't arrested on the spot because white people in power had called on the National Guard to stand down for a number of hours and called on Capitol Police to not be issued with their riot helmets and not be issued with the riot gear. So they didn't hurt the white people making an effort to overturn the elected government after Trump was ousted on November the 7th, 2020. These are the white people who, having been overindulged like spoiled children, grew violent and reckless and injured 140 policemen. There were police officers. There were police officers with cracked ribs, with brain damage from head injuries. All of this is a consequence of overindulging white people to the point, or having enough white favoritism happening, that some white people, a subset of white people, get violent and cooperative, selfish and destructive. So MD Hewitt is here and is comically pointing out that it was just a normal tourist visit, which has been the disinformation approach from some Republican representatives who even participated in trying to safeguard the House of Representatives building. MD Hewitt just got here and thought someone's username was Disbitch. Yeah, somebody's probably blocked her by now, which is fair. It's fair. She was a good grain of sand in an oyster to remind me to engage with the content. Okay, well, I must have, there's a physician that I want to listen to. That's us now. Whew. This is a civil rights icon, Gloria Richardson. Look at her put up her hand on a gun that has a bayonet attached or a knife attached to the end. That type of bravery and determination is something for us to mimic in this hour of need. That's the US. Where is the lady? Sorry, I'm searching for a very very important thing. Searching for what I might hang my here. All right. Alrighty. It's hard. I want to try and refer to myself as mummy, but I'll try not to do it. Which means I know my children need me and I'll have to go soon. Has anybody else seen it? There's a physician who discussed the deadliness of the pandemic, the deadliness of not choosing. Oh, I found. Well, hopefully.
Patients sat in their ER waiting to have surgery, and they begged us, please find a bed for this young person who just needs a surgery to save their lives, because 40 people have told us no. And we're at the beginning of this surge. So what did we do? We shut all of our activity in the hospital. We tried to free up as many beds as possible so that we can once again, every single day, try to protect those people who don't have COVID, while more and more COVID comes through the door. We're being overwhelmed, and it's happening fast. What are we with our kids? When I look through our list every morning, it's my friends. We have peers. They're 30 and they're 40 and their kids are starting college in 3 weeks and they're not going to be alive. It is us. It's not those people who are sick.
It is us. That's a very important thing she's saying there, because the people who need to hear this are contrarian white people who think it's them, who, whether consciously or unconsciously, have watched the pandemic ravage communities of color and they think it's not us. We don't need to be inconvenienced because of it. And their defense of their liberties is not a good faith defense of liberties for all Americans. It's defense of their freedom to not wear a mask and their freedom to continue to watch and believe Tucker Carlson and his clearly indulgent racist rants, which people can tell it's racist. People can tell what he says about migrants are racist. They just think it's fair. They think it's fair to be racist, and they think it builds America, and they think it reduces a negative impact of migrants because their understanding of the world. It's more than racist. It's wrong and it's dangerous.
Sicker. It's us. That's who's in the hospital today. And across the street are my friend's kids. That is what Delta variant is. It's coming for us. It's a beast. That's what we're seeing in the hospital. That's why we're nervous. That's why I'm here to talk to you today, because it's different. I want to be clear after seeing what we've seen the last 2 weeks. We only have two choices. We are either going to get vaccinated and end the pandemic, or we are going to accept death. A lot of it, this surge and another surge, and possibly another variant. That's it. It's no longer about what you heard on the news or what you think your hesitancy might be. If you don't choose the vaccine, you're choosing death, and you're choosing a surge and another surge. Pandemics last for years. We know that. We're very educated people. Pandemics last for years. The only thing that will stop them is the vaccination. Which one do you choose? I choose vaccination. I will sit in Tiger Stadium. I will watch our vaccinated team play a phenomenal game of football over and over again this year. But when I look in the front and the back of me, there will be people who are not there, people who I have high-fived for years walking up those stands. And it's not because they let their season tickets go. It's because they're not here.
Okay, so that's, to me, that speech, very important, and I hope the Biden administration and all Democrats who have any access to power and profile at the moment, any access to any platform, they need to be putting up doctors and nurses and health professionals up there who can speak to how they're tired and who can speak to the tragedy of not only having their own lives endangered and their own children's lives endangered, but just the sorrow and the tragedy of watching the unvaccinated not only jeopardize their own lives, but bring death to all of us, because your vaccination has less efficacy when in a climate of massive exposure through a pandemic circulating via the unvaccinated, because that's where it's finding hosts. That's where it's potentially growing new variants, which might have even more potency against the vaccine. We can't shrug our shoulders and say, oh, social Darwinism killing the stupid. Those people have children. Those people are being looked after by health professionals whose vaccine status is being challenged, whose levels of protection are being attacked by exposure to masses of cases of COVID, patients once again flooding hospitals in the South, in the Midwest, in anywhere where there are where there's saturation level exposure to conservative media, Republican conservative media. That's what I'm going to call it. Bitch, get out of here with your disinformation. I'm done with you. Okay. Yes, as Biden says, these people are killing people. Holistic Deb is a deadly bitch with death at her fingertips. I'm sure she's on lots of platforms telling people don't take the vaccine. All of the elite people who you hear that message from are themselves vaccinated, and they're exploiting your stupidity and they're weaponizing your stupidity into an instrument of death delivered to children, intubation delivered to children. harm, financial, emotional harm delivered to children as their parents sicken and become unable to work. You, Holistic Deb, are a noxious, seditious bitch. And sometimes I'll try not to engage in that, calling people names associated with animals. It's part of a dehumanizing escalation of rhetoric that can support violence. But to just not be very violent about it. I wish you well, Deb. I hope you personally live a long life, but stop killing people. Would you mind, would you nicely stop killing people? Read something a little different. Stop being so attached to your own ridiculously stupid convictions. Doesn't seem stupid to you, but once you chip away at some of those things you've been so exposed to that they just feel like incontrovertible truths to you, they feel like common sense. Of course, vaccines are terrible. Of course, measles never really existed. Polio never really existed. They're all democratic hoaxes. Of course, smallpox never existed. Vaccines are rubbish. Yeah, sure. Stop it. Stop it. Even before COVID, stop causing resurgent outbreaks of measles, because some people who get measles will recover. They'll suffer horribly for a while and recover. Some will suffer only moderately and then recover. And some will get a sequelae from measles and they'll get encephalitis, they'll get swelling of the brain, and they'll die. So you're causing death by undermining one of the most substantial achievements of modern medicine. So I can't see any of her comments now because mercifully I've muted the bitch. Such a bitch. Such a bitch, because what I guess I should dig down into, what is really offending me right now, is that arrogance to come here and to promote something which is deadly, and people are telling her it's deadly. And even when we're so clear about how you're endangering the lives of children, how you're hurting people and hurting the economy, and how you're just a tool of smarter, wealthier people than you, who are even more unethical and unprincipled than you, are pushing this on you, weaponizing you as part of their pyramid scheme of delivering harm to the American people and the American economy. I want to use words from Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, like gnarly. I'd love to go all 1980s with my vocabulary, but unfortunately I haven't watched that movie, only snippets. Gnarly, noxious. What are some 1980s insults that I can use without tapping into a type of low-class form of insult exchange? I don't want to exchange insults. I just want to call Deb out big time. I want to motivate her to stop. I don't want to motivate her to get involved in some kind of slagging match. So I'm really pleased that she's muted and we don't have to read her comments. That's awesome. But shouldn't call her a bitch, should I? Shouldn't call her a bitch, because you know what it's doing? It's feeding her appetite for fighting. She just wants to fight. Things fun. Being angry fun. Sure. But being horrified and frustrated and helpless as you watch selfish, destructive idiots damage everything you love and jeopardize your children's safety, that's not a game. That's not a game. She's got a channel, does she? Bless her heart. We wish her well, and we wish she'd realize the error of her ways. I think some really good-natured fictional character I came across once in a book was like, I wish the Kaiser, everybody else is going, I wish the Kaiser would die or get boils. And the little boy was like, I wish the Kaiser would grow a conscience and then could feel all of the harm he has done to the people of the world. And that was, everybody's like, wow, that's so profound. What a noble soul that little boy has, to just wish that the Kaiser would suddenly grow a conscience and feel all of the emotional pain associated with the harm that he has caused. 1980s insults, airhead. Oh, that's actually quite beautiful. I love it. It's not reductive to the level of animals. When you call people the names of animals, you're basically helping people get to the point of being able to kill each other, because you're dehumanizing people. So try not to call them a bitch, Davina. Try not to call people any of the, you're trying to insult them, but don't dehumanize them. Airhead, that's an insult for a human. I'm grateful. I'm so grateful that you gave me that insult. MD Hewitt, hooray for you. And as part of my human efforts to take care of this human body, I'm going to go swimming with my children now. Moving very soon to Boston. We're looking for places to live. We'll be staying in temporary accommodation for a while and just trying to find somewhere to settle down. I'm going to post you. I'm going to write a column. I'm going to use an online template to publish the call out. It's going to be hopefully snappy and pithy, and it's going to call people out. It's not a book. It's going to be something I try and work on a little bit each day and just get stuff published. I have a lot in me, as you know. And I'll try and still do my daily broadcasts, but also include a link to the daily broadcast on a template website thingy called the Call Out. At the moment, the callout.com, I think, is like a tradie website that's not in use, but somebody bought the domain. So I'll work on it. I'll tell you the name when we get there. Anybody who wants to contribute, it's going to be a free website with no ads. If we ever get ads, if we ever get successful and you want to be a paid columnist, also call on me, message me. If you're an illustrator, if you're a formatter, if you have any skills and you think democracy is still in sufficient danger to warrant devoting some of your hobby time to such a hobby, it's there to preserve democracy. And more broadly, the reason why democracy exists, which is to give people enough power to be able to solve problems that impact them and to make life better for each other and for themselves and their families. Yes, we can call them stupid. But yeah, Airhead's got a nice color to it. I like it. MD Hewitt sounds like he likes that idea. He says, yeah. Thank you, MD Hewitt, for your support and encouragement. Thank you always to everybody for your support and encouragement. Kim, you're such a regular and you're always so generous with your time and your coin thingies. Take care, everybody. And yep, Republicans are out there right now endangering the lives of their own lives, but also the lives of essential workers, which are more likely to be Black and brown people. So it's still a pandemic that Republicans are yielding as a racist tool to harm people of color in the United States. Even if the hospitals are filling with the unvaccinated, they'll still be filling with unvaccinated essential workers who shouldn't have been in danger in the first place, because this is a pandemic that could have been and should have been brought under control by now. And it's having a resurgence specifically because of obdurate human behavior. Obdurate, word of the day, spelled OBDURATE. It means stubborn. So that's a good insult too. You obdurate, reckless, radical Republicans. I'm going to chuck a Newt Gingrich. Newt Gingrich wrote a pamphlet in 1990, circulated amongst Republicans that said, use these words and these words. Do you know what that did? These words to disparage Democrats, these words to sell your own patriotism and goodness and values. It gave consistency. It took advantage of an element of human psychology, which is called the exposure effect. Anything you hear a lot from even semi-trusted sources becomes a rusted-on conviction, becomes common sense, becomes an established truth. That is the exposure effect, and Democrats need to harness it. Democrats put their intellectual energies into governance, into finding solutions, policy solutions, legislative solutions to human problems, to advance the human condition, to advance the prosperity and safety of Americans. And Republicans work out how to best manipulate Americans. That is a lot of their governance agenda. So, yep, I'm going to do a Newt Gingrich. I'm going to come up with some words that I haven't tested through focus groups. I don't have the funding to run focus groups. So they'll just have to be words that my brain comes up with. And I'll publish that on the call out. Words for Democrats to use, words for Democrat supporters to use. Brian says, I look forward to our time together every day. I always leave more educated. Yes, thank you. Much appreciated, Brian. Kim's also looked up obdurate and says similar to obstinate. Yes, that's a great way of scaffolding off people's pre-existing knowledge. We know obstinate, obdurate's just that next level $5 word. There you go. Now we're all worth $5 more. Take care. Thank you, everybody. Talk again soon, and stay well. It might be a little while till I can broadcast again, but I will be there. Bye, everyone. Bye, Kim, Bob, MD, Brian. Oh, who else? Knowledge. Jennifer asks, am I British? And I said, no. I haven't said no. I'll say no now. I'm not British. My father is British. Was British. He's Australian. Onion Muffin says hello from Strawberry Plains. I don't even know where that is, but I'll look it up. That's cool. Thanks, MD Hewitt. Thanks, Sean. Knowledge. Onion Muffin, Kimchi. Was Christopher here as well? Brian. Not Christopher today. Okay, take care, everybody. Deb. Bye, Deb. If you're still there, you're probably not, because I muted you a while ago, and it's not that fun to keep listening to someone when you can't fight with them because they can't even hear you talk. That was fun. East of Knoxville, Tennessee. Oh, we'll stay safe. I know the Tennessee state government, Republican state government, has stopped the state government from being able to promote vaccines to children. Any vaccines, not even the COVID vaccine, which shows how Republican positioning is getting more extreme and more anti-public health, provided they have any element of Trump philosophy to latch onto. In this case, contrarianism against vaccines. Poor Tennessee children. I hope that situation is remedied sooner rather than later. So my commiserations to the people of Tennessee for that, having that terrible, contrarian, negligent, recklessly homicidal governance. And, what's one good thing to end the day with? What's a piece of good news? Anybody got good news? More mainstream right-wingers are growing increasingly outraged over Turning Point USA. That's a young Republican association, allowing conservative porn star Brandy Love to attend the Tampa event where minors are present. That is a bit special, isn't it? Turning Point's got a porn star. Well, I hope they fracture. I hope their fracturing continues. They're fracturing over a fractured reality. Some people are all the more likely to intensely commit to reality where they have to subscribe to shared delusions, shared omnipotence. We're all powerful because anything we say Trump says can be real. He can promise us the world, and we'll believe it, and it'll feel like the world is coming to us any minute now. I imagine Scientologists feel like that. They've got planets that are promised to them. And once you've bonded with people over your joint adoption of non-factual beliefs, non-verifiable, far-fetched beliefs, then you are part of a community and your ties to each other are strengthened by that unusual thing you have in common, your shared irrational beliefs. Hey, Marsha, I'm so sorry you've just missed me. I'm leaving, but it's lovely to see you. Hi, sane and educated friend. Yes, that's how we feel about each other here. Better World was here too and said happy trails. Thanks, Better World. Have a wonderful evening, everybody. Take care. Sleep well. Talk to you soon. Marsha will watch the replay. Awesome, Marsha. I hope it's good.